Let me say something that's going to make half the comments section immediately angry. Bugatti's Chiron running to temperature is not the finish line everyone is treating it as. And look, I understand why people feel that way. An 8-liter W16 with 4 turbochargers, fitted inside a written-off Chiron per Sport that Bugatti blacklisted and refused to support, warming up cleanly in an independent workshop, with fabricated radiators and a hand-built front chassis holding it all together. That is a genuinely remarkable thing to watch, and the reaction to it makes complete sense on an emotional level. But emotion and reality are two different things. And right now, the conversation around this rebuild is so caught up in the feeling of this milestone that nobody really wants to sit with what's still unresolved. The car running is not the same as the car being saved, and the gap between those two things is a lot wider than the comment section is currently willing to admit. So that's what this video is about. Because the full story here is a lot more complicated, and honestly a lot more interesting than just Matt proved Bugatti wrong. Let's start with the thing that's been quietly sitting in the background of this entire rebuild and finally exploded into the conversation this episode, the airbag situation. Now, if you remember what Mate Rimac said early on, and for anyone who needs the context, Rimac is the CEO of Rimac Automobili, which is now the parent company of Bugatti. He made a specific point about why he didn't think this rebuild should be happening outside factory conditions. And people kind of reduced that argument down to, Bugatti thinks their parts are too special for anyone else to touch. But that wasn't actually what he said. What he said was more specific and more uncomfortable than that. His point was that safety systems aren't just about the individual components. They're about how every component behaves inside that exact car, tested together, calibrated together, validated as a complete system. That's a harder argument to dismiss. And this episode basically turned it into the central question of the whole rebuild. Here's what happened. Matt pulls out the passenger airbag from the Chiron and starts finding markings on the back of it, Volkswagen Group markings. He traces the part number, and it comes back to, and I want to be precise here so nobody can say I'm exaggerating, a standard Audi A3 airbag. Part number 8V0880204H. Stop and actually think about what that means. One of 60 Bugatti Chiron per Sports ever built. A car that costs well over £3 million. A car engineered around the most extreme performance specifications a road-legal car is allowed to have. And the passenger airbag traces back to the same parts catalog as a family hatchback you can buy for £25,000. Matt's logic was straightforward. Bugatti is part of the Volkswagen Group. So if a compatible part already exists within the group, why develop something entirely new from scratch? He ordered the Audi airbag, put it next to the Bugatti one, said they were identical, and when he went to fit it into the dashboard, it slotted straight in. Same part number, same shape, same back panel. And to a large chunk of the audience, that was basically the end of the argument. But here's where I have a genuine problem with that reaction, because fitting and working are completely different things. An airbag has one job. It has to deploy correctly, in the right direction, through the right part of the dashboard at the right moment, in the right kind of crash, while communicating properly with every sensor and every other safety system around it. The fact that it physically slots into place tells you nothing about any of that. The part number matching doesn't confirm the airbag has been validated inside this specific car. And the uncomfortable reality is that Matt cannot test whether it works correctly without crashing the car, which is obviously not happening. So what we actually have is an airbag that appears correct, fits correctly, and looks correct, with Rimac's original argument still technically unanswered. I'm not saying Matt is wrong to use it, but the people treating this as a gotcha moment need to sit with the fact that finding the right part is not the same as certifying it. That difference is exactly the kind of thing this rebuild is going to carry around with it permanently. While all of that was happening, the interior was going through something that I think tells you more about where this project truly stands than any individual repair does. The airbag deployment tore through the dashboard and steering wheel in the crash. You can't just clean that up. The whole thing had to be properly rebuilt. So Matt sends it to E3 Customs, and what comes back is genuinely not what went in. Before the crash, this Chiron had black leather, black Alcantara, and bronze detailing. What comes back from E3 is purple and white patterned leather with custom stitching throughout. It's loud. It's completely different. And I think some people are going to look at that and call it disrespectful to the original car. But here's my actual take, and I know this is going to sound strange. I think the custom interior is the most honest thing this rebuild has done. Because this Bugatti is never going to be a standard Chiron per sport again. Not legally. Not publicly. Not in any version of reality where this rebuild has been documented in this much detail for this many people to watch. It's always going to carry the crash. It's always going to carry the salvage title. It's always going to be the car that Bugatti refused to support, that Mate Armstrong rebuilt in an independent workshop anyway. There's no version of this car where it quietly goes back to being what it was. So the custom interior almost feels like the car accepting that, leaning into a new identity rather than pretending the old one still exists. But here's the detail inside that interior work that most people are completely glossing over, and it matters more than the color scheme. The dashboard leather has to have hidden weakening points built into it, specifically engineered weak spots in exactly the right place, so that if the passenger airbag ever deploys, it has a predetermined path to break through the material. They used a laser to recreate those points, making them invisible from the outside but functional underneath. Think about what that actually means. They had to correctly engineer something specifically designed to never be seen, in a car where the airbag sitting directly behind it may or may not be properly calibrated for this exact vehicle, and where the only way of knowing whether any of it works correctly is in the worst possible situation. That one detail is this entire rebuild in miniature. Incredibly careful, genuinely skilled, and permanently impossible to fully verify. Then there's Bob. And I want to spend some real time on Bob, because I think the way the audience is talking about him is missing something important. Bob has, at this point in the build, become the single most critical person in this entire project. The engine mount work was impressive enough on its own, but now he's dealing with the front chassis, which is a completely different category of problem. The crash damaged the front structure, Bugatti still isn't sending parts, and so Bob has to repair and recreate sections of the front end of a Chiron per Sport entirely by hand, from scratch, in an independent workshop. What's genuinely fascinating about watching him do it is how calm he is. He compares parts of it to other high-end cars he's worked on. He says certain sections are actually more straightforward than jobs he's done before. He cuts out the damaged material, sources the correct grade of aluminium, builds sections back corner by corner, welds everything, and gradually brings it back to shape. By the end of it, looking at it, it genuinely appears close to factory. But here's the tension I keep coming back to. The reason Bob has to fabricate parts for a Bugatti Chiron from scratch is precisely what Bugatti would point to as evidence that this rebuild should never have happened this way. His work is what keeps the whole project moving forward. And at the same time, his work is what keeps the controversy permanently alive. Because looking right and being certified are not the same thing. Both of those things are true simultaneously. And that dual truth is what makes this rebuild so much more interesting than it first appears. Now the radiators. I know that doesn't sound like the most gripping part of this story, but stay with me, because this is actually where the rebuild gets real in a way the engine startup never did. The original radiators are damaged. Replacements aren't available through normal channels. So Bob builds them from scratch. And this isn't fixing one broken component. A cooling system for an 8-liter W16 with 4 turbochargers is an entire interconnected network that has to function together under sustained heat. There's no partial credit. Eventually, things start looking genuinely close. The front end is painted, the interior is going in, and for the first time, the car is actually starting to look like a Bugatti again rather than a workshop project. Then comes the pressure test, and they hear air escaping. There's a leak in one of the radiator cores. Bob goes back in, finds it, sorts it, and finally the system is ready. 40 liters of coolant, through front radiators, side radiators, additional cooling circuits, multiple pumps, all depending on each other. And here's why that moment carries more weight than people are giving it credit for. Starting an engine tells you things are working right now, in this moment. Running to temperature tells you something much more important. whether the whole system can sustain itself under the actual conditions this car was built to operate in. A first drive is coming. And for the first time in this build, it feels like a real possibility rather than a distant hope. But a first drive is not a finish line. It's the beginning of a different kind of test. Trust gets built over time, over repeated use, over the car being pushed through the conditions it was designed for. That's still a long way ahead. Beyond the mechanical, there's something else worth sitting with. This car is permanently famous in a very specific way. The crash, the salvage title, the factory refusal, the Audi airbag, the fabricated radiators, Bob's chassis work, all of it documented publicly for millions to watch. That history doesn't disappear. There's no future presentation of this car as a clean Chiron per sport. It will probably never hold traditional collector value. But it might end up being the most recognizable rebuilt hypercar ever put on camera. That's a different kind of legacy, and it's worth asking whether that's what Mate set out to create, or just where the project ended up. Mate's supporters have real ammunition. The car started, ran to temperature, and a first drive looks like when, not if. The people who called this impossible outside factory conditions have to reckon with that. But the skeptics haven't lost the argument either. The safety systems are unverified in the only way that truly matters. The chassis is repaired, not certified. The airbag fits, but hasn't been validated in this specific car. And even a first drive won't put the car under the kind of load that reveals whether everything truly holds. Both sides still have something to stand on. That's what makes this one of the most compelling automotive stories in years. Not a clean win, not a clean loss, just a complicated, controversial project that keeps moving forward without ever resolving the questions it started with. That tension is exactly why we keep watching.